We have betrayed our allies in Afghanistan, but most importantly here, we have betrayed ourselves. That's the outcome of this horrific move out of Afghanistan as we pass the 20th anniversary of 9/11. I'll tell you this, I will never forget, and I hope you never forget either, what happened 20 years ago and what we saw from this administration in its horrific exit of Afghanistan. We're going to talk about all of that today. Plus, we've got a recall going on in California right now. We're going to discuss what that's really about, how California does that. I was there when they recalled Gray Davis, plus a whole lot more today. Taxes, and more taxes. That's what we're talking about. I'm Trish Regan. Welcome everyone to the Trish Regan Show. But let's start first with how we have effectively betrayed ourselves as Americans and everything that we just went through for the past 20 years, right? The trillions of dollars spent, the 2,300 lives lost there in Afghanistan, not to mention 3,000 people lost here at home on that horrible, horrible day on 9/11. Look, we betrayed our allies for sure, right? The UK is livid with us. We have Afghanis that fought alongside us that kind of expected, let's just say, a little bit more in return, right? For giving up what they had to give up. And I'm not saying we should have stayed there, but I am saying this. We never should have left our own people, and we should have never left those that helped us in such a lurch. That really is pretty horrific, right? When you talk about wartime betrayals, that's what we did. We betrayed the people that were our allies, and we're betraying ourselves because we made a promise. We made a promise 20 years ago that nothing like 9/11 would ever happen again on our soil. And sometimes you need to give up some money. You need to give up some resources. You might even need to give up some lives overseas, but it's all to make sure that it doesn't hit here at home, so that a father going to work in the morning is in a situation where a terrorist takes him out and he never comes home. So yes, we have betrayed ourselves. And that is courtesy of this administration. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. What has just happened is unacceptable. You know what else is unacceptable? The reality that so many poor and middle-class Americans, including minorities, have really been left out of this upward mobility that we've had in recent decades. You know, I've talked about it a whole lot. You can go back and listen to my podcast on the hourglass economy, right? A lot on top, a lot on the bottom. It's the folks in the middle doing everything right, going to work every day, trying to pay their bills, trying to put their kids through school. They're the ones that are most hurt in this environment. And that's a function of really bad government. Well, this is all coming to light right now in California. People are saying, wait a second, you know, this entire charade that you've got going on, it's not working. It's not working for me. It's not working for my family. And this is why you're seeing potentially Gavin Newsom being recalled there as governor of the state of California. Possibly conservative radio host, also at Salem with me, Larry Elder, taking his place. Now we'll see how this all shakes out, but I'll tell you, I've seen it happen before. I was there when Schwarzenegger took over for Gray Davis because you know what? People were pretty fed up at the time. The lights were always out. The power was always out. There were all kinds of problems in California. Well, Gray Davis paid the price. And California voters, they take it very personally. And they have that recall and they can use it. So we'll see how this all shakes out. I don't want to say anything before it happens, but obviously we're going to be watching the numbers as they come in. I do want to remind you, everyone, go to Trish Intel. Go to trishintel.com. Download this podcast. Subscribe to my newsletter. Make sure you hit like on YouTube. Or if you're watching on Rumble, give me a rumble. I'm so happy to have you here because it means that I'm being heard and you're being heard. Right? We're in this together. And there's an effort underway to make sure that certain voices are not heard I'm going to talk about that a little later in the program because the Wall Street Journal has come out with a pretty in-depth report on this, where they spoke to whistleblowers at Facebook. And they discovered that indeed the company is employing algorithms to make sure that, again, certain people, yours truly, and others I'm sure, are not heard. And we're going to discuss that. But, I want to get back to what we're seeing on Capitol Hill for a moment here, because the Democrats have come out with a new plan to hike taxes, including the corporate tax rate. They wanted to go up. 39.6% is the top statutory income tax rate that they would like, as well as another 3% surtax, an expansion of Obamacare, 3.8% tax that would be to cover your income, 46.4% top income tax rate, all in, right? That's what that would be. I mean, don't forget, you've got state and local now. Theoretically, you should be able to deduct those under this plan, but we'll see, right? Like that doesn't exist yet. The corporate rate, as I was saying, is going to jump to 26.5% from 21%. I'm sorry, but didn't we just go through a whole onshoring process, right, where corporations actually relocated back to the United States of America because the Trump administration made it worthwhile to do so by bringing that corporate tax rate down and allowing them to onshore all these dollars that they were keeping in overseas markets? I mean, none of this really effectively works, right? For your average American cap gains rates would go up from 23.8% to 28.8%. Pass-through businesses would lose their small deduction, which is capped at $500,000. It would raise the marginal small business tax rate to over 40%. I mean, we can go on and on. I mean, they want to tax everything: cigarettes, vaping. That actually hurts a lot of very average middle-income people. I'm not saying that I'm a fan of that. I believe in taking care of yourself and looking out for your health, and government should help incentivize you to do that. But I don't know as you're going to basically kick the smoking habit by just taxing everybody to death on it. No pun intended, given what tobacco actually does. But anyway, let's move on to the $600 billion carbon tax. That's another one they've got in there. The Democrats on the Senate Finance Committee have added a $600 billion carbon tax. So basically, that would mean if you have a car, if you have a home, if you have a business, you're going to get taxed. I mean, is it not enough that we're dealing with mass inflation right now? Right? I mean, consumer price index out today. We saw producer prices already skyrocketing to all kinds of new records. How much more can the average person take? I would just throw that question out there, because they seem to think that money is just, growing on trees, that they can make all the money via the printing press or via corporations and, the people that should pay them. Well, if you're hitting people both with inflation and with higher taxes, I mean, really, what do they have left? Just a reminder, subscribe to my newsletter at trishintel.com. Go to trishintel.com. I'm there every day. We're filing stories on the markets, on the economy, on politics, all the things that matter to your bottom line. So go to trishintel.com. You can subscribe to the free newsletter. You can get this podcast every day right there in your email. A quick word from one of our sponsors. I talk a lot about the importance of individual responsibility and how much the onus really is on us in this environment to really take charge of our own lives, right? And whether it be, trying to figure out your investments, or whether it be even just preparing in the case that you're not here anymore for your loved ones. I mean, that's part of being, I think, a responsible adult, making sure that you're able to take care of those around you, should you be gone from this world. And it brings me to a story that some of you may have heard before. Growing up in my small town of New Hampshire, there was a young family that lost their father from a heart attack. And I went to school with these kids, and I remember my parents talking about it at the dinner table and saying how sad it was that their dad did not have life insurance. And it kind of just, registered with me in a pretty profound and pretty big way, because, I'm just sort of a kid at the time, and I'm thinking, my gosh, first of all, what is life insurance? Second of all, what do you mean? They just lost their father, etc. So this family was grieving, obviously. I mean, the kids were having a hard time. The wife was having a really hard time. But then on top of that, they had to move homes, and they had to completely uproot themselves, and they had a whole new lifestyle as a result of what happened. So it just was just a double whammy, right? You're dealing with the emotional trauma of losing a loved one, and then suddenly you've got all the financial trauma associated with losing your main breadwinner as well. And so it's why I tell anybody, before they start investing, really and truly, you've got to look into making sure that you have your business taken care of. And that means having life insurance and making sure that you've got your family taken care of. You can buy it actually really, really cheaply. You can get whole life insurance, which is an investment. But aside from that, term insurance is really, you just have to have it. It's just part of being a responsible adult. And whether you've got young kids or whether you've got a spouse at home, you have to make sure that they are covered. So I want you to do that. And when you do, if you haven't already, go to selectquote.com. Wonderful company that has a lot of experience in this field. And what they do is they go out and they look around, basically. They've got all kinds of algorithms that match you to the best life insurance provider. They work with all the top names in the industry. And so you put in your information, they go out and search, and they come back and they give you the best quote. Their tagline is, "We shop, you save," and that's exactly what the idea is supposed to be here. So you don't have to call up the phone, and you don't have to call all the different insurance companies and call all the different brokers. You just go to selectquote.com, selectquote.com, you type in your information, and you let them do the work. And you get the quote from them. And so they've helped so many families, millions of families, get life insurance. And like I said, it's just one of those things. It's part of being a responsible individual that you've got to do. I want to get to another story because this one's pretty important. And it speaks to just the sort of aggressiveness of big tech right now. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that Facebook has some algorithms in place, right? We all know about the algorithms. They do a whole lot of shadow banning. And they basically ensure that certain things don't see the light of day, right? We've seen that certainly in the political commentary space. There are certain viewpoints, certain conservative viewpoints that Facebook does not want you to know about, doesn't want you to talk about. They don't want to give any oxygen to. And so in order to suppress this, they have algorithms that look for sort of keywords. I have a feeling that my name might be one of those keywords, because I know that I've certainly struggled with this, certainly over the last 3 months. I mean, it's actually incredible to see that I have 166,000 followers, but there are days when only 40 people see something that I post. Well, something's going on there. Well, it turns out I'm not crazy. I'm not sitting here going like, why are only 40 people seeing this? It has to do with the algorithms, and the Wall Street Journal is reporting, thanks to some whistleblowers there at the company, that there are algorithms in place that effectively shadow ban or suppress certain kinds of content. Political, conservative content might be one of those categories, shall we say. But this is interesting. Facebook itself actually has a kind of whitelisting system, right, where certain names get shuffled through. So Donald Trump Jr., for example, can post. His father could post, until he couldn't, of course. That's a whole other story for another day. But he doesn't suffer from this shadow banning because they've whitelisted his name, and anything that he posts that might get hit with these algorithms actually gets overridden by, more algorithms. It goes to like a separate part of the computer. And there's only a few people, though, that have that. And the rest of us are kind of caught in this no man's land where they are the ones deciding. It really is a limitation, if you would, on our freedom of speech. And you might say, oh, they're a private company. Yeah, they're a private company, but at this point, I'm sorry. Like, this is an information superhighway, right? So there is an argument to be made that at some point they may need to be looked at much like a utility company was. years ago. As a shareholder, if you own shares of Facebook, I'd say that's still kind of okay for you in that, don't forget when AT&T was broken up, or rather I should say Ma Bell was broken up into many different companies. Well, guess what? You know what? Those companies did really, really well. Chances are if you became an AT&T shareholder, because you would have gotten that as part of the split, you did absolutely spectacularly, right? So shareholders shouldn't worry about this as much as maybe some of them do, in that if there is a breakup in store, I think that investors will do just fine. And I think, frankly, the consumers will do just fine. The problem right now is that consumers can't actually get all the information because these algorithms are controlling things. So I encourage you to check out that story on the Wall Street Journal. I'm going to do more on this in the coming days because this is a big, big problem right now. And, people know it. I think they sense it. You're not allowed to really talk about your views out there, but how many people come up to me and they whisper, I really appreciate what you're doing. And it's because they're seeking me out. You guys are seeking me out, and I thank you for that. Make sure that you spread the word, like this video, like this podcast, download it, subscribe, do all of those things and spread the word because it's a really important time right now. The other thing I just want to mention, in light of it being such an important time, in light of this sort of, crackdown from big tech on viewpoints that maybe are not so appreciated, I want you to check out SupremeCout.com. This is a group actually started by First Liberty, which is a nonprofit law firm, and they basically have gotten together a ton of people, like 100,000 people, including the Heritage Foundation, including Americans for Prosperity, a whole bunch of groups, really wonderful groups that are concerned about Americans' freedom, and they're concerned about the effort underway right now to pack our courts. Don't forget, the President of the United States has put together a commission to look at how he might, shall we say, redistribute the left and the right on the court right now. I don't think our courts should be political. They should never be political. I think that people should just go in with a pure interpretation, whatever that may be, conservative or liberal, of the law. And you also have to recognize that when you elect a president, that president has the opportunity to put justices on the Supreme Court. But you don't want a situation where every president comes in and just loads the court with more Supreme Court justices. Before you know it, you're going to have the House of Representatives. And we don't want another one of those, right? So go to SupremeCout.com, sign the petition, join this effort to really make sure that our voices are heard, that the President of the United States hears from all of us that we don't want our court being packed. The last thing, I just want to go back to the Wall Street Journal, the story that I was talking about in terms of Facebook, because I find it interesting. This is actually another story right out of the Journal. It's interesting that TikTok doesn't seem to be suffering the same kind of scrutiny, if you would, that a Facebook is suffering from. And that's interesting because TikTok actually has some really, really bad stuff on it. And they're targeting our young people. They're targeting teenagers. They're targeting preteens. And they've got all kinds of things, that you really don't want. Let me quote from the article. Thousands of others of posts, they went through and they did this search on the post, were from creators who labeled their content as for adults only. Still others encouraged eating disorders, glorified alcohol, including depictions of drinking and driving, drinking games, lots of drugs on there. I mean, this is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. And somehow TikTok gets away with it. Well, rightly so. We're all saying, oh, wait a second, what is it that you're showing on these other mediums? And so I think that there's a little bit of a double standard here, and it's concerning. It's concerning. Why? Because this is also, do not forget, a company out of China. It's owned by a company out of China. This is why it became such a big deal during the Trump administration, because the concern was, how were they influencing things? A sample of 974 videos from the Wall Street Journal included drugs, pornography, and other adult content that were being served to minor accounts, including hundreds shown to single accounts in quick succession. So this is not okay. I mean, keep in mind, by the way, the Chinese, they take this stuff really seriously, too seriously, right? Because it's a total invasion of privacy. But nonetheless, the Chinese, they don't want their kids watching more than 3 hours a week of video games. That's it. You can play video games for 3 hours a week and only on weekends. And yet here we are with their company, TikTok, with all kinds of junk, like serious junk that's polluting the minds of young people. And again, we should emphasize that these are minors. This content is being directed at minors. So there's a big double standard going on, and it's important that we get to the bottom of this, because it's not okay and it's not acceptable. And it's not right for Facebook to shadow ban important thought right now, while simultaneously this other company, held by a Chinese company, is serving up all kinds of dangerous stuff to young ones. I want to thank you again for listening and for tuning in today. I want you to go to trishintel.com, subscribe to the newsletter, make sure that you download the podcast on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and I will be right back here again with you tomorrow. Thanks again.